Goodness, did you see how long this video is going to be? Before we dig in, let me explain what it is. Let me give you a big picture overview to know if you even want to watch it, and to also show you why you really should watch it. So let's say you got this character from the marketplace, which I did, and I'll show you later where he is. But just as a concept, I have this static character and I can't do a whole lot with him. I can add some animation cycles maybe, but I can't really. What if I want to pose him? What if I want to just have him standing as a prop somewhere in a static shot? If you make a control rig, you can bring in that same character with the control rig controls, and then you can pose this character however you want. Right? You got all your different controls, some IKs, some bend controls. You know, maybe you're supposed to be looking over here. This is really handy. You can do a lot with this for posing. That is one half of what we're going to look at, getting this part prepped so that you can pose characters. But even more importantly is when you have a character that was a skeletal mesh and you had a motion capture, some kind of clip applied to them, just an animation cycle like this with the canned third person, right? So you got that. What if you want to make any changes to this? If you know how to use the FK, it's doable, right? You can right click here, go to edit with FK control, but that's still a little inconvenient. What you're going to learn today is how to make a full control rig that has a backwards solve so that you could put your controls on this character and totally make any change you want by just doing a right click, bake to control rig. This is the control rig you'll be making. Select that, bake out the keys, and then now you have full control over this character throughout that animation. The animation has been baked onto the control rig, and you can now change whatever you want to that animation cycle. You can make tweaks, you can make fixes, you can do all sorts of cool stuff. So that is the mini commercial of what you will learn watching this video. So let's get right to it. I wanted to use a character that everybody could grab and follow along with if they wanted to before they have their own character. So run over to the marketplace and grab this adventure character and add it to your project. So down in the full folder, you'll find the different versions of the character. So I just grabbed this one for starters. So this is the character that we're going to add our control rig to. So get started on that by right-clicking on the character in Content Browser. Go to Create and choose Control Rig. So this gives you a new control rig asset, and double-click and let's open that up and start building our control rig. Bring it back over here. So I'm going to go ahead and dock it here. So this isn't going to be as bad as you think it might be, because we're going to go through it step by step. I'm going to start off slow-ish so we get some of the basic concepts, and then I'm going to move it a little quicker. The good thing about videos, you can rewind if it's going a little too quick for you, but I think it'll be fine. So you start with this, the forward solve, and this is the first of two parts of what we're going to do in this tutorial. First, we're going to build out just a standard control set for this particular character. Then we're going to add a reverse solve for adding it to existing animations. It'll all make sense when we're done. From here, let's go to this tab, the rig hierarchy, so we can see the rig of this character. If you want, go ahead and go to character bones, all hierarchy, so you can see all the bones here as well. So let's, again, start simple so we understand the concept of what we're doing, and then it'll click for you. You'll be like, ah, this makes sense. So our character, of course, already has a skeleton and skin weights and such, so let's just start at the root. That's a good place to start. This is the hierarchy of the character, and we need to add our controls to the character. So let's just right-click on root, go to new, and say new control. You're going to do this a lot. So you got a new control. So this new control got added by default as a child of the root bone. We'll deal with this in a minute, but let's just leave it for the moment. And let's look at this root control and see what we can do with it. Over here on the details with it selected, you go to shape properties. This is where you can choose what type of shape you want. For example, maybe I want the root control to be a thick circle. And you see there's a thick circle, but it's kind of small. So you can come down here to the scale. I'm going to lock it, and I'll make it 5, maybe a little bigger, 8. And then if you want to change the color of it, let's go with green for center stuff, just for kicks. We'll go red for right, blue for left, and then I'll use green for stuff in the center, I suppose. You can do whatever standard you like. Doesn't matter. Just the color. At the moment, this is our control, right? So the theory is you grab this control and you move it, and that should move the character with it. The control works. Now we got to hook it up to the root object here. So again, this is like the beginning of where it's all going to click for you and be like, oh, this all totally makes sense. So this is the root bone. So drag the root bone into your little work area here. And this is a bone. We want its position set. So you want to choose set bone. All right. So this is going to set the bone's position. And the thing we want to set the bone position is based on the root control. So drag the root control in here. And in this, we're going to get the control values. So what are the values of the control? And we're going to pipe that into setting the root bone. So the way you do that, just grab transform here into transform there. So that is connecting the position. Now you're going to say, okay, let's do it. And you're like, hey, still not working. So the way this works is you need this to kick it all off. So this execute needs to go to that execute. Now, if you grab this control and slide it, you'll see it starts moving, but it's looking a little weird, right? So this comes back to the child parenting kind of thing. So we don't like this concept where what's happening is because the root control is a child of the root. As the root moves, that pushes the root control as well. So it's a kind of a weird recursive kind of thing. So we don't want the root control to be a child of the root bone or part of the hierarchy at all. We want it kind of separate. So quick way to do that, right click and choose unparent. Now it is not in the hierarchy of the skeleton. It's independent, but it is still linked to drive the bone. So as I move that, that moves that. In a way, it's as simple as that. So we just got to do a few more of these to get our character up and running, put in some IK rigs here and there, and we'll have a working character. So let's take this a little bit farther, actually a lot bit farther. Let's go to the pelvis bone, and same thing. We're going to right click on the pelvis bone. We're going to add new. Now again, we'll speed this up. I'll show you some tricks in a bit, but let's just keep it simple to get started. So we're going to do a new control again. You can do control N if you like hotkeys. All right, and again, hide that. It put it, where did it sneak that little control? Come here, you. It's hiding because of the way it defaults to be a child. There it is. So it's hiding here in the, it's under the pelvis control. I know already, I already showed why we don't want it part of the hierarchy. So I'm just going to right click and unparent that. I want to reparent as a control. I do want it, actually I'll leave it off for a second and show you why we don't want to keep it like this. But first let's set it up and then you'll see why we don't. And come over here. Here's our pelvis control again. I'm going to make this one green because it's centered, and I'm going to also make this a circle, thick circle. I like to just go ahead and hit this huge for a minute, 10. So on the scale is 10, and we'll come over here and we're like, oh, that doesn't look quite right, does it? So we can offset that. So if we take a look at the character, we need it to rotate. This is our y-axis. We need to rotate it in y 90 degrees. So come down here and type 90. There. So now we're good there. All right. So we've got, it's a little bigger than I need at the moment, but I'm okay, fine. Let's just say 8. Just seems a little extra chunky. So now, same idea. We want to get the transform from the control. So we say get this control, and we want to go to the pelvis bone and have it set the bone, connect that to that, and we want this to execute next, so we drag that to that. Let's test it. Select that, drag it, that's moving the character. Select this, drag it. That's not moving the character anymore because we have a hierarchy issue. When the pelvis bone is driving the location of the pelvis, it's after this action, and because the pelvis is not parented to the root, it's not following along. So to fix that, we need to keep this as a hierarchy. So just left mouse click, drag, drop it on the root. Now all is well. That moves with that. All right, so we're going to build more of a hierarchy here. So now let's pick things up a little bit, save you a little bit of time. Now that we understand the concept, we can do things a little bit quicker for the rest of the central part of the character, meaning up through the spine. Let's open up this and grab spine, spine, not clavicle. We'll deal with that later. Neck and head. All right, so we grab all of these at the same time. Now here's where it gets cool and quick. I'm going to right click. I'm going to go to new. I'm going to go not to new control because this will only do one at a time. I want to go to add controls for selected, but don't just click it here. Read the pop-up text. It says alt click for additional settings. So I'm going to alt click. This is where you can choose where do you want these controls to go. Do you want it to stay as a hierarchy as you have selected, which I do? Or if you said list, it would just be a flat list at the bottom of all these, meaning without any kind of parenting. But I know I want parenting. Or if I said child, it would put each of these controls as children of that exact bone, which we already discussed why we don't want in this situation. So I'm going to go back to hierarchy and hit OK. So it built the little hierarchy here, and we need to make sure that it is parented underneath pelvis. So I'm going to click and drag this onto this to reset that. And you can multi-edit here. So I'm going to select all these. I'm going to come over here and make them green and say OK. They're also all selected. I'm going to scale them all to, let's say, 5 and see what they look like. And, oh yeah, they're still set as spheres. He's kind of funny looking with a bunch of spheres there. So let's go over here and let's change that to, we'll just stick with the circle theme for now. Again, you can choose whatever you want, really. I'll say thick circles, and same issue where the default alignment is not in the orientation we want. So I'm going to come here and change this to 90 again for all of them, and they all line up. They inherit the setting of the bone that they were created from, which is why they're not perfectly straight. You can level these out later if you want. I'm just going to leave them for now. Let's look at now how to get those controls into our interface here. This is where speed counts. So I'm going to shift select all those, drag them all in, and say get the control value. And then I'm going to grab spine, neck, head, drag all those in, and set all these bones. All right. Oops. So that goes with that one. This goes with that one. So now just doing a little bit of arranging here. Get this other one over here. Come here, you. All right, so now chain all these together to keep the flow going. Okay, so that evaluates, but then we want this to actually connect, so we need to push the transforms from the individual controls to each bone. So these are in order of the hierarchy, right? So it's going up the spine to the neck and then to the head. So now this whole central part of the character we have up and running. All right, so now he's doing his thing. Anytime you move a bone, if you don't have to hit a whole bunch of undos, right? So like, see if I totally mess this guy up and move him all over the place. Once we add the IK for the feet, his feet will stick. If you totally tweak it, you don't have to do a bunch of undos. Just say compile, and then that'll put everything back to where you left it. All right, so that is our central part of our character for now. I'm also going to show how, like if we look at the neck here, that neck is a little huge. So I'm going to go ahead and scale that back down to say maybe, I don't know, let's just put it at 2. And you might say, well, it's kind of like in his skin, and I'd actually want to grab it a little bit higher than where it is. So what you could do is that's the red axis you want to go up. So just come over here to location and just drag that, or type a value, just move it a little bit. So notice that the pivot point is not moving, just the selection point. So you're not changing its functionality, you're changing just basically where you grab it. So you don't have to go down into his neck, even though that's where the control lives. And if you want from the side, you could do the same thing. So I want to push it forward and wide just a little bit. Again, this has no bearing on the functionality. If you don't want to do this stuff, that's fine. Same with this head control, it's kind of big. So this is getting into the area of just making personal tweaks. So I'm not going to do this stuff much longer for you because you can adjust yours as you want. We just want to make sure it's functional. So it is functional, so we're going to move on. Let's now look at an arm. So we have a shoulder here, and here's a cool little node, because you might think, man, this is going to be a long string of nodes if we got to put the whole character here. There is a node called sequence. So right click, type seek for sequence, and add a sequence node. What a sequence node is, it's really just kind of like a split. So you pop it in here, and then this lets you kind of be able to make some forks. All right, so that's string A. Now we're going to add a B, then a C, then a D, just so we don't have to have one huge long line of nodes. So for this shoulder, let's make a shoulder control, a clavicle control. We'll start with the left. Right click, same thing, new, control. And we want to unparent that. So it's down here. That would be part of the, that would be most connected to spine 3. So you want to drag onto spine 3. That's where it splits off to the neck and the clavicle. It matches, you know, the hierarchy up here too, right? So we got, just to show you what I'm looking at. Come here. So from spine 3, we split off to the clavicle left, right, and the neck. So that's what we're setting up down here as well. So the clavicle, we're starting to get down the left side, and I said I'm going to do blue for left. So I'm going to click here, set it to blue. Okay, as far as what kind of control you want here, can be whatever you want. Some of the controls I've seen people use, they use this little, where's that quarter circle? They use this quarter circle. Let's pump it up pretty big to see where it is. All right, so it's kind of funky down there. So that means we need to rotate it in X 90 or minus 90. Let's type in the right field and see which way it goes. All right, so add a 90 there, so it pops up here. It's still a little big, so I'm going to set it back down to 2, too small, 3. All right, so when you grab that, that matches the shoulder, but we haven't set it up yet. So same thing, throw that in here, get the control for that, go up to your actual clavicle bone and set the control. Connect this to this, this to this. Give it a quick test. Always good to do a little test to make sure. Turn on rotate and yep, that's working. I did undo there, but again, if you just hit compile, it's also going to set it back to where it started. Now we're going to diverge and add a new layer of information. We're not going to set up an FK for the rest of the arm. We're just going to go straight for IK. Again, this is kind of the simplest rig we can do. We're not going to even do fingers in this tutorial. Well, I'll add another one later, but we're pretending maybe this is just even mocap character that you need to have control rig for that may not even have fingers. So again, this is just getting you in the game. This is just so you can get familiar with all this. So we have a node called a basic IK, and go ahead and plop that down here. And there's 3 main bones it needs to know about. So you see you got a little line up here. Let's go to our hand, clavicle left. Then we have upper arm, goes in this first field. So you can just click this little arrow here to get that, or you can do the drop down and go find it. But if you already have it here, it's easy enough to say lower arm, click to add it there, and the hand to add it here. So this is setting up your little IK chain. Now the effector is going to be the end of your IK handle, which we need to make still. It's going to go on the wrist here. So while the hand is already selected, I'm going to right click, go to new control. And for this shape, I'm going to choose a box. So I want kind of easy to see the rotation and the framing of it there, so it's easy to grab. I'm going to make it blue. Blue for left. And for the moment, I think the size is actually fine. That's not too bad. Let's also unparent it. Right click, unparent. Now in this case, I don't really want it. It's kind of its own free character in a way, but it's not so free that I don't want to move the character and leave it behind. So I do want it parented underneath the root at least. So if I move the character, the IK moves with it. So I'm going to throw that under the root, but it's not being part of this part of the hierarchy. So left hand control, I'm going to pull that out, and I'm going to get the value from the hand controller. And we want to throw the transform into the effector. And you can organize this however you need. Just pop it under there. The other thing we're going to need is a pull vector for an IK. What way is the elbow going to point? So let's set that first, or create it based on the elbow point. So I grab the lower arm. I'm going to make a control, and we're going to add something new here as well. So I'm going to make a new control, and let's spin around. Whoops. I'm going to move it, right? Because I need to, hey, come here, you. So also, I'm going to unparent that while I have it selected, but put it under the root as well. I'm going to push it back away from the direction of the elbow. Now in this case, I want this to stay here. All the other joints so far have matched up with the controls that we made for them. In this case, I do want to keep an offset here. So what I do in this case is I right click and I say set offset transform from current, meaning current position. I don't want to adjust it using these values, because when you push it away this way, the control grabber thing here, the shape moves, but the origin still, or the pivot still stays on the joint. So in this case, that's why it's a little different. Let's use a thin pyramid so it doesn't get in too many people's line of vision. It's also, the default is pointing in a direction I'd like to rotate it. So I want to rotate it so it points at the elbow. So I'm going to set that, that's the z-axis 90. All right, so see how it points at the elbow's location. So that sets up the pull vector. Let's rename it before we plug it in, just because this has a weird name. So I'm going to call it PV underscore arm underscore left control. Also going to make it blue, stay with the theme, drag it in, and we're going to get the control like we do. The slight difference here is we don't need all the transform data. We just need to know where it is in space. So we just need its translation. So I'm going to grab the translation and plug it into pull vector. And I'm going to switch the pull vector kind to be location. Now the part that gets a little tricky is the wrong word. You just got to make sure, watch, I'll show you how to fix this thing that comes up in a second. So as I connect this to make it be active, the arm gets a little wacky, right? So how do we fix this? What we need to do is, here where it says primary and secondary axis, we need to set these pointers properly, or these vector locations. So the easiest way to do this is not trial and error, which might work for you, but there's a much easier way to do this. Read the directions here. It says the major axis being aligned along the item, and then also secondary is the minor axis being aligned toward the pull vector. So what you need to do is, I'm going to go back to the main menu. I'm going to go back to my character here. Here's a handy tip. Right click, browse to asset, which we know is right here. Then right click, skeleton, find the skeleton. So here's the skeleton, and I'm going to double click to open up the skeleton. Okay. Now you'll see technically this character has been based on the UE4 mannequin, but we're not going to lean on any of the naming conventions or try and copy paste stuff, because I want to show how to make it from scratch. So that's what we're doing here, even though a lot of this would match up with the control rig skeleton that already exists. Again, let's do it from scratch so you understand how to do it with any character you might have. With the skeleton up, let's look at that lower arm bone and switch into move mode, and let's take a look at what we got here. The axis going along the bone is the x-axis, and the one pointing towards the pull vector is the opposite of the y-axis. So we got x for the primary, opposite y for the secondary. So let's pop over here. So primary, this happens to already be at the right default. So x in 1 is right. That means it's going along the x-axis. Secondary axis has a 1 for y, but it's actually minus y because we saw it was pointing in the opposite direction. I'm going to say minus 1, and now the arm is just fine. So you got to do that. Each time you set up these IKs, it's easy to just pop open the skeleton, look at the direction of your axes, and then put those in here where it asks for it. All right, so now let's check that. Grab the hand, move it around. That's working. It's bending fine. Grab the pull vector, double check that, and now that's up and working. That wasn't that bad now, was it? Hit compile to set him back to where he was. Let's do the same thing now on the right side. So now let's try a little trick. I was having trouble with this actually working before, but let's give it a go just to show in case it does happen to work this time. So we have all these controls already set on the left side how we want. So let's right click, go to mirror, and the x-axis is what the character is aligned on, right, from left to right. So we want x. We'll leave axis to flip to z. We want to have the names updated as well. So anything that is underscore L underscore, that matches our 3. You can see in the naming convention down there. We want them to be replaced with underscore R underscore so that it automatically changes the names as it mirrors across the x-axis for us. So hit OK. And then you'll say, hey, check it out. It mirrored all my controls for me to the right side. So let's control click all those. Let's change the color to be red for right. They're already the right or the proper shapes. So in theory, we can just start setting up the same nodes. Now we could also just copy and paste all these and swap the names. Let's give that a go. Why not? Let's go for speed. Since you already know how to do it the long way, we just did it a minute ago. But before we hook it up, let's change these first. So clavicle L is going to be clavicle R. Let's see. And then the control for it is going to be clavicle R control. Left hand's going to be right hand. Oh, did I put? Yeah, I put the right one. You got to pay attention. Sometimes you might pick the bone versus the control. And maybe you wouldn't, but I sometimes do. Everything else looks good there. Then we also need to change from upper arm left to upper arm. Let's see, let's type a U there to get a head start. Upper arm right. Lower arm, type a L for a quick search. Oh, well, LO. Lower arm right. And hand, hit a H, hand right. And don't forget, these axes that we had set up before may not be the same on the other side. So let's go double check our skeleton. Pick our bone, and they are not the same. This time, the align axis is minus x, and the pull vector is actually correct as y of 1. Correct is very subjective, so it is y of 1. I guess there's no right answer. So our x was minus 1 because it's pointing away from the wrist, and our y-axis is 1. So in theory, everything should be hooking up right. Now, I did this another time and it didn't seem to work, but we'll give it a go and let's see. If not, we'll just build it all from scratch again. Connect this to this and let go and see if everything explodes or if it works fine. And it exploded, right? Wow, boy, did it explode. All right, fine. Then I'm not sure where goes wacky. All of this should be fine. It was the making of these mirrored controls that gets a little weird. Something goes weird in there. Even whether it was the Z or none, just something goes weird when trying to mirror. If somebody knows why it should work, if somebody knows why, let's try one more time. Let's say he's totally messed up. I'm going to do that again. I'm going to go to mirror. I'm going to go to underscore L, underscore right, underscore. Let's set this to none. It's like it gets close, but not quite close enough, right? Something's a little wacky. Let's go through all 3 of them just to see. You guys like, why didn't you figure this out ahead of time? Because I'm fine building it the long way. And all right, let's do this 2 more times just for fun. Isn't this fun? Underscore L, I'll say underscore R. Oops, almost missed the L. Nope, wasn't that one either. All right, we have one last chance. If we mirror in in Y, will it work? Or is it just a bug? Nope, none of those work. So the mirroring, for whatever reason, and this is good for you to know, doesn't want to work. So we will build it again quickly. I'm going to disconnect it for a second so I can build my things without it being an issue. So I'm going to go to my Now notice that there are some IK controls in theory in this rig, but we're using this as even for a more simple rig. You don't need these. I'm going the hardest way possible, or the most simple way possible. So let's go to our right hand. Actually, while we're here, we're going to do clavicle. We need one of these. So let's make a new control for that. We need a hand. New control for that. And off the lower arm, remember our pull vector, we need a control for that. And we need to take them out of the hierarchy. So select them, right click, unparent. And they're all already red, which is nice. So we'll leave them red. That's just the default color. We do need to put them where they need to go in here. So this needs to be under spine 3, just like the other one. These two also need to be under the root control. And I need to rename. Didn't I rename this one earlier? Oh, well, it copied the other one. I thought I renamed that to be pull vector. Maybe I never hit enter. I'll have to go back and watch my own video and figure out where I didn't save the name for that. All right, so yeah, it's named properly here. Weird. All right, yeah, I'll watch my own video and see why that name wasn't the same. I learn as much making these videos as you guys do. But I like to leave the mistakes in because if I can learn from it, so can you. And let's go back to this. So go to our hand, right control, make that a box. Go to our pull vector for the right arm, which we still need to offset properly. I'll show you a little trick for that. So I'm going to, remember this is an actual move, not a little offset of the control. We actually want to move this. Also made it a pyramid. And also rotated it. Now you'll notice it's kind of hard to see, but I can see on my screen. It's pointing the wrong way, so I want to say minus 90, the other 90. And I'm going to jump into the back view for a minute so that I can get these aligned the same. My snapping is on again, so let me turn off snapping for position. Just like on the left side, we need to right click and set position from current. Okay, back to perspective view. All right, so those two are aligned. And I got all my controls in there, and I still need to modify the clavicle control. And we used the quarter circle thick, I think. Let's make it big so we can see its orientation. It's off in a couple axes there, isn't it? We need, let's make that minus 90. And then we need, what's our other axes there? Hard to see. That's the blue, which is Z. And let's drop it back down to, what was the other one? 3, 2, 3, 3. All right, so now those are matched. So now we have all the controls in the proper place. Remaking them from scratch. because the mirror didn't work for us in any configuration. Still not sure why, but that's the way it goes for us. The naming of my controls is fine here. I think we might be able to just plug it in and run with it. Click, and we're good to go. So grab the wrist, double check it. So IK is working there. Pull vector is working. Good. Hit compile, hit save. All right, let's now, organization's a little messy here, but that's right. All right, we'll put a big comment here. That's all the arm stuff. We're not going to deal with fingers. Again, we're going for the most simple rig so you can get an idea of how this all even gets put together first. Let's now look at the legs. The legs aren't too crazy. It's not much different than what we did for the arms, actually. So we have, and we're ignoring all the twist stuff as well, because that also is, you know, something a little bonus. Pretending we don't even have that option. Simplest rig we could get. So we know we're going to need controls for, actually we only need a control for the foot. So left foot. While we're here, again, let's go for speed. Let's go for the right and the left foot. We're also going to need a control for the pull vector. So let's grab the calf and the calf, which is similar to the idea of the elbow. That's basically the knee. And let's right click, go to new, add controls for selected, hold Alt and click. And we want this to be a list. We're just going to throw it all down at the bottom and then reparent where we need to. So just say make it a list and OK. Come down here, and all of these are going to be similar to the hand and the arm pull vector. Let's first rename this. We'll call that PV leg or knee, whatever you want to call it. PV leg. All of these we want to be parented under the root control. This is going to go a lot quicker than you think because we've done this already. Let's see, for the feet, let's go ahead and make those also boxes. They're a little small, so I'm going to... 1.5, sure. Again, you can choose whatever you want. And let's see, our pull vectors. I'm going to pull that out. Right click. Set the offset transform from current. Same with the other pull vector. I'm got to push it the other way. I'll change the colors in a minute. And again, go to back so I can line these up exactly. Right click. Don't forget this part, otherwise it'll reset itself. Right click, set offset. Back to perspective. Oops, come here, you. These two need to be pyramids as well. So set those to pyramids. Their orientation is a little different each, so I need to select them one at a time. We need a little rotation in the z-axis again. The other z-axis, the other way. Select this one. That's also in the z that needs rotation. Try 90. Yep, 90 works for that one. Okay, so we got our feet. Now all we need to do is set up the, since we got the controls, we just got to set up the IKs for it. So let's go ahead and put in a basic, whoops, hit tab, type basic. Get a basic IK node here. I'll try to forget change my colors. So selecting the left side, I'm going to make the left side blue. And we need to fill in these nodes. So I don't have them selected, so I'll show you the other way. Here we need a oh wow, there's a lot to choose from. Maybe I will just it's a little easier to just come up here and then, isn't it? To just say thigh. use the thigh. Calf, use the calf. Foot, use the foot. So that's the bones we're controlling. We need the foot control. Get control. And we need the pull vector for the left leg. Get control. Translation for the pull vector. Full transform for the effector. We need to double check our axes here. So open those up, pop over to your mannequin, or yeah, your mannequin skeleton technically again, which this is. Let's go find, I could try to just click it. Yep, make sure you, sometimes you might hit the twist instead, so make sure you have the calf selected. All right, so the pull vector is the y-axis, the primary is -x. Totally will depend on your character, so you need to double check that every time. And which side. From one side to the other may not be the same. So I think we're fine. I said minus, let's double check. Yep, and yep. So the knee is pointing along the y-axis to the pull vector, and it's the opposite of the x-axis, so we're good there. And so, in theory, we're good to go. Let's go grab the next, and let's grab this. Move it up a little bit. And drag from here down to that execute. All right. Let's check it. Grab the foot. It's working. Knee pull vector is working. Hit compile to set it back. No. Well, I'll restart and join us in a moment. Okay, and we're back. I had to rebuild most of this leg down here because I hadn't saved, but you know, that'll teach me to save more often. Should teach you as well to save more often. One thing I slipped in here before, which we didn't cover, was this little thing here. So if you want to redirect some of your flows, right? So I'm going to connect that down to there, but I don't like the fact it's running behind that one. If you double click one of your little noodles here, it'll give you a little node that you can then, whoops, come here, you grab it, and then you can move it out of the way, which is handy for troubleshooting because then sometimes you can just alt click to get rid of a section and then plug it back in. So it's pretty handy. All right, so now our IK is working, right? So there's our little foot. Double check the knee. The knee's working as well. All right, so compile that. I'm going to, because the logic is the same, I made the nodes by hand just like we saw before, so I didn't mess with the mirror stuff again. So I'm going to Control C, Control V, because we're doing the same thing for this leg. Again, we're not doing the twist, we're not doing the reverse foot roll rigging business, which you can do if you know how and you want to. But again, we're just trying to go with the simplest setup in this case. Maybe I'll make some more videos, go a little more detail into fingers and foot roll and those. I'll show you another way to how to kind of rip off the Epic rig so you can see how to do it yourself too. Let's see, we need to change foot left to foot right control. We need to change PV to PV right and switch our bones here. I'm going to go do it this way again. Click and click and right foot and oops, wrong button. And then don't forget, double check your axes here. Go to your skeleton, click that leg. X is pointing down. Y is pointing the opposite way of the pull vector. So X pointing down, which means it's 1. Y is pointing the wrong or the opposite way, so I need to make a -1. So plug that into there. Hit save. Learn from my lesson there. Let's do a check. All right, leg's working. Leg is working. Save. Compile. Now let's take a minute. We'll say for the forward solve. Again, forward solve is basically we're just adding controls to the existing skeleton so that we can move them if we need to on our character in our level. or even animate, technically, right? We can animate now with this rig in the editor. Let's see. I also missed. I'm going to clean this up a little bit. I'm going to select all those, hit C. That's my arms and shoulders. These are my legs. This is kind of the whole central part of the body there. You can, of course, you can name them. So you could say central, or you can break it into, you know, body versus spine versus head and neck, and left leg, right leg, you know, whatever you want to do. So let's see. So this kind of ends the basics of part 1, and I'll start part 2 in a second, talking about the reverse solve, because that's where the cool stuff comes. Well, let's take a look at what this does for us. If we go into our man, and we got to go find, where did I put that? In mesh, full. Here is our control rig. So here's the non-control rig character, and you can't, off the top, do much with him other than nothing, right? I can drag my control rig in there now, and now I have the ability to animate my character, and, you know, set a key down here, right? Go a few frames, set a key, right? So plain all, we can now animate with the control rig, and that's good, but we need to show how to do the reverse solve or the backward solve so that you can have this functionality added to existing animation, and that's where the really cool stuff happens. And it's actually really quick to set up since we've done this part already. So let's jump back to the control rig and let's set that up. Again, it's not going to take nearly as long as the foundations here. It's a lot of just plugging things in now at this point. So the backward solve, let's start on that. Hit tab and type backward solve. The idea is, so what's the concept of what we're doing? If you have a character that already has an animation on it but doesn't have a control rig, this is used to put the control rig pieces where the character already is and have it take over. It'll make sense when we're done, a little bit better when you actually see it in action. Again, let's slow down and start at the beginning again. We want to set the position, so we're creating the control rig on top of a character. So that would mean we have a root control that we need to set. Where is the root control? So we're going to say set the root. So it's kind of the opposite of what we did above. And then how we want the root control to go where the existing root is on the character that doesn't have a control rig on it. So we need to get that. So we're going to pull in the root. Now, what's a little bit different on the root level, actually, let me jump back a second here, is might have an offset to it. So we're going to hit tab, and we're going to add this is a new node for us, project to new parent. Again, this has to do with, as you can see, it has to do with slight offsets. We're going to use this for pull vectors as well. This is kind of a case of just do this, and all will be well. So what we want to get here is the root control goes in this field here. So I'm going to hit this button to select it so it's easy for me to choose it. A little lazy trick there. And then we want to go back up here to the root bone, put that in here. You're going to get the initial there, and don't check initial here. So if you leave everything with the defaults, and the easiest way to describe this is just do this. So follow that example and plug that into there. So you're getting the concept's very similar. You're finding the value of where the root is and using that to set the root control. But in case there's offsets involved, then you need to use this particular node. And then you can plug that into there. This is only going to run when we add a control rig for a character that has animation that doesn't have a control rig yet. You'll see. All right, so now we just need to do the same thing for all the other bones and controls, let's say again, of the central part of the character. So we'll go for speed, pelvis, spine, neck, head. Pull all those in. And in this case, we need these to be set. So set all these. And we want them to be set based on the current position of, not root, all of their corresponding bones. So wherever the bone is, move the control to that position. So I'm going to drag that in here. And we're getting the bone position for each of those. And we're using that bone position to set the controls position. Just doing a little cleanup here. It'll take you a minute to do the same, so I'm not worried about this taking a second because you're doing the same thing right now. Oh, did I miss a head, neck? Which one did I miss? Head, neck, pelvis. Oh, root. I don't need this one. All right, so then just like the forward solve, it's the same. We're taking the existing bone position and using that to figure out where should the control of the control rig go when we're building a control rig onto the character. So just hook all these up. It's kind of nice and soothing on a rainy morning. Okay, so this takes care of the central part of our character. We now have, when we run a reverse solve, all of those bones are going to line up fine with the character. Okay, so now let's look at an arm. So how do we do the arm? We have the clavicle bone, which has its own control. So I'm going to do the same thing we did on the top and add a sequence node so we can split the execute path here. That into there and this into there. So we've got the good thing is all the controls are already made, so this isn't crazy hard. It's a lot of dragging and dropping now. So we want the bone. We want to get the bone's position and use that to set the clavicle's control for the left side. Set the control position. Okay, same with the hand. We have the hand left control. We need that to be set, and we're going to set that using the existing position of the left hand bone. So we got to get the bone's position. Plug that in there. Now the pull vector uses that same parent thing because there's an offset, right? There's a offset in the position between the bones. So we got to set that up slightly different, but the idea is very similar. So for the pull vector of the arm left, which is this one, we need that to be set. Set control. And we're going to set that, but after we do that, project to new parent node. So tab, project to new parent. And again, this is just because there's potential offset. Well, we know there's offset. So this first field is going to be that same vector. So let me browse to that and add it here. So the old parent and new parent being the elbow bone or the lower arm bone. So use that in both cases. This is the initial, this is the new position. Again, it's just calculating offset. And plug that in here. This, we're going to kind of do a big gamble and set everything up before we do any testing, which I think is a safe gamble. We'll see. Okay, so that takes care of the left arm. We don't have too much more to do here now. And we could, if we want, while we're here dealing with arms, we could string this together. Control C, Control V, set up the right side. Clavicle right control. Just make sure you're picking controls and bones properly because it can get a little, you know, like, wait, which is which and which is which? Clavicle right. Just look at it before you change it. Hand left control to hand right control. Or talk to yourself like I'm talking right now. Hand left to hand right. Pull vector left to pull vector. Oh, double check. Right. Same one here. Right arm. Make sure you pick arms, not legs, or things are going to look weird. And then lower arm position. I'll just do this real quick. I'll say pick it, then use it. All right, so hypothetically, ooh, that was a close one. Don't forget to hook these up. And it's probably a good idea to save, as we know software can crash every now and then. All right, now really quickly, there's only a few things left we need to do to get the legs up and running. Get it? Legs running. Anyway, same idea basically is what we're doing right here, but for the legs, and we don't even have a clavicle to deal with, so should go pretty quick. Technically, I guess I could copy and paste these that I have set up there, but I like to drag and drop things. So we need, just to reemphasize this again, foot. We need the foot control to be set by the actual foot's position. Left foot, get the position of that bone to set the control. Same with the pull vector. We need the pull vector of the leg of the left. We need that set. We need it set with the offset from pull vector position. So again, we need a project to new parent. To get the offset, we need, I'm going to go get that control, put that here. Left side. Where is that bone? So let's go find the calf bone here and here. So that's all we need for the leg. Ooh, we do need to plug that in there though. That's the left side. Let's go grab this and plug it in. We're nearing the end, assuming it all works. Should work. All right, that's the left side. Control C, Control V. And this is going to be the right side. Let's see, let's do it this way. Foot left control, we need foot right control. There. Foot left, you know what, actually I'm just going to do it this way. Foot right. Pull vector left leg to pull vector right leg. Select it, add it. And the left calf to the right calf. Select it, add it. Okay, this concludes the setup for the backward solve. So let's compile, save, and test to make sure this is working well. So I'm going to make a new level sequence to test this out. So up at the content level, just as good habits go, I'm going to create a new folder. Let's call it cinematics. Gonna go in here, right click, animation, level sequence. Shot one. All right, let's open that up. Let's add this guy to our level sequence, and let's say we'll give him he's got a couple cycles already built in because he uses that mannequin skeleton, so he's got a run, or say a walk. All right, so he's got a little walk lined up here, and I hit play and he's doing his little walk stuff. But let's say that's all fine, or maybe it's mocap data that I want to tweak, and mocap cannot be perfect. Sometimes you want to make little adjustments. It's not that fun to do it as is. I could make adjustments doing a right click, edit with FK control rig, which is nice that this exists, so you can make changes, but it is so much handier to be able to do this. Bake to control rig, since I made my reverse solve, this is available. So you can choose this. It's going to say all this stuff. Usually just go with the defaults if you want an exact not reducing keys. And if you need to reduce keys, you can mess with your tolerance. But I'm going to not reduce any keys. So I'm going to get a baked out key on every frame, which is fine because I want to have full adjustment. So hit create. And now my character is fully editable with the rig that I've built for it. So let's say, I don't know, you can do whatever you want creatively. Now you do need to be a little familiar with animation and keyframes and all that for that. But so what you have now is keys on every frame. Up here you have a control picker if you want to pick it from here, or you can pick it from here. All right, so again, all of these are keyed. So even though I move it on, I'm going to turn on auto key first. Right, so I'm going to move his leg somewhere crazy just for that one frame. Right, so now if he does a weird little pop there because I moved him there. But this is a way easier way to make changes and modifications to your character now after he has potentially some built-in animation. If you decide you don't want this, you can select the control rig, delete it, and then this, when you added the control rig, became inactive, but it's still here. If you want to turn it back on, right-click, go to Properties, and set it back to active. And then now he's back using his animation cycle that he had from the beginning. But again, it's so much nicer. You have so much more flexibility now that you can just right-click, bake the control rig, choose your control rig, create it. And now this guy has his own rig that you can animate. I'll try and create another video eventually that has what to do with fingers, what to do with twist, but this will get you rolling. Also, in the meantime, before I get around to making that video, most of this information of how I figure this out is just use the actual control rig and repurpose it. So this control rig came from the sample file it's Up the Iks control rig demo file. So it's in the marketplace. So if you go to, where is it here? If you grab this file, this one here, control rig mannequin, comes with the full control rig for the mannequin, and just use that to kind of reverse engineer and figure out how all of this works. This character does have twist, it has the reverse foot and all those uneven fingers in there. Open this in 5 and have it make a copy of it, and then that works fine. So highly recommend that if you want to push yourself a little bit farther than a just straight basic rig. And now for something totally unrelated, jump down to my description, look for the link for Ambidexter Studios, and enjoy some stop motion done by my son Dexter. You'll really like it, and I'll really appreciate it. Once you've had a little break, get back on that control rig and see what you can do.